Julie Girling, Conservative MEP for the South West. The issue of bees and the decline in the population is something you've been following for quite a while now.
Yes.
What's this new announcement now from the European Commission?
Well, the Commission have made a quiet little announcement, no big trumpeting, but what they've said is they're responding to two things. Quite a lot of parliamentary questions from myself and MEPs in other countries, and also a resolution that went through the plenary of Parliament last session. And they have responded by saying that yes, they will put some more effort and some more finance, not specified quite what it all adds up to, but into the main areas that would help us to address the decline of pollinators. The first one being research into bee mortality. We hear a lot of anecdotal evidence, but until you actually have proper scientific data, it's quite hard to quite rightly persuade the Commission to put money into it. So they're going to do some proper research and get the data on bee mortality across Europe, including the UK. They're also setting up a research programme on how to combat the more common diseases of bees, and I think that might stretch across other species as well, because it's not just bees capture the imagination, but things like hoverflies also are massively important to pollination of crops. So they'll be looking across, they call it apiculture, but it doesn't cover just the standard bee. So they'll be looking at research into how the diseases can be combated. And they're essentially, the really big issue here is that they have recognised the importance of bees. They've always recognised the importance of bees as a part of the agricultural scene in the sense of making honey. But now they're really recognising the importance of bees in pollination, so that any crop, whatever crop you're growing, be it fruit, vegetables, cereals, we need bees and other insects, and they finally recognise that as a major driver in productivity and supporting agriculture. So that what I'm delighted about is that when they've done this research, they can then transpose that information when they're looking at things like the new CAP. Because for the Common Agricultural Policy, they need to be looking, as we know, at Pillar 1, Pillar 2, environmental issues, paying farmers to steward the land, and pollinator encouragement's always been part of that, but I think this might just raise the profile of that a little bit, so I'll be delighted with that. One of the thornier issues, perhaps particularly for the southwest of the UK, where I represent, is the effect of badgers on bees, because I certainly hear, as I go around the countryside, a lot of farmers concerned about the fact that badgers eat bees. And particularly those species that nest in the ground. They're very delicious lunch. So I'm also encouraging the Commission to pay just a little bit of attention to that, please, because seems entirely pointless to have a protected species that's preying on. We're encouraging another species that simply gives food. The whole chain has to be examined, and I'm delighted that the Commission have taken this up.
And as I understand it, one of the issues at the moment is that all of the causes of this increasing bee mortality aren't actually known. As you say, a lot of anecdotal evidence. But are you hoping that this investment by the Commission, this new research capacity, is going to get to the bottom of actually what's causing this problem?
This is really, really important. One of the things that we heard, which I never cease to be amazed by some of my colleagues in the Parliament, but one of the things that we heard in the plenary last month was an amendment by some MEPs suggesting that the decline in bees is due to genetically modified crop planting, which, as every farmer knows, there isn't that much of it in the EU. It's very heavily restricted. Many EU countries have no GM grown at all. So to actually say that that's causing the decline of bees is ludicrous, and we have to really stop all of this it's not even pseudo-scientific, it's just nonsense, and get some real facts. So yes, that is really important.
And are you also hoping that experiences from a range of countries will sort of be pulled together, really. I mean, is this a problem you're aware of in other European countries, and do you hope there'll be a sort of sharing of expertise, really?
Absolutely. It is a problem across the whole of Europe. And people do sometimes say, okay, so if something's happening in Greece, why would that matter to us? Well, there are two things. One is that there might be slight variance on behaviour of insects and animals, but they do have a pattern which is common. And the use of certain pesticides may be an issue across Europe. As you know, those are all European controlled now. We also, there is climate change, and so what's currently happening in the middle of France to bees may be happening in the middle of the UK in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years' time. One may be a climate change skeptic in terms of its causes, but you can't be a skeptic in terms of the fact that it is happening. So insect colonies move, and French bees may well be crossing the channel soon to find the conditions that they like. And if that happens, then the lessons of what's happening in France now will be hugely important for us.
And what about this EU financing that's been announced for national programmes? I know in the UK that the British government, your government has promised, I think already, more than £10 million. Is this extra EU funding going to make a difference, do you think, in the UK?
I hope so. I haven't yet had an opportunity to discuss with UK colleagues about how we can coordinate the two. One of the things I'm very keen on generally is that when there is European financing available, it complements what our government's already doing, and sometimes there is a disconnect. So I can't give you a definitive yes or no on that, simply to say that I will be talking to colleagues in DEFRA about how we can make sure that the two sets of finance complement, don't duplicate, and get the best for British bees.
And just finally, I know in your press release you call for a comprehensive EU strategy on the bee. How far are we away from that now? How much further is there to go?
Well, I think we're getting a long way down the line now because of just the sheer recognition of it as an issue, particularly this recognition of it as the pollinator side of it as opposed to the honey making side. So I think we're getting a long way towards that. When I talk about calling on for a pan-European, I think that has to be zoned. It's like everything with agriculture and animals and wildlife. What happens in Bulgaria is not the same as what happens in Ireland, so we have to be sensible about that. But I think a European approach is really important, because a European approach will say, where does the research money have to go, where is it needed most? Prioritising, and I think that's very useful.